Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm not gonna lie, this was a very difficult one for me to do, but I am very excited about it. We are going to be ranking my top 10 eyeshadow palettes. If you have been with me for a while, you will know how much I love eyeshadow palettes. They are my makeup babies. I love and cherish each and every one of them. I actually do feel in a very small way, kind of the way I feel about my children. I love all of my children equally. It's impossible for me to pick a favorite child because I love them all for different reasons, for each of their individual personalities, and I kind of feel that way about my eyeshadow palettes. I know that that sounds crazy, but I like them all for different things. Basically, I'm saying this, just because an eyeshadow palette didn't make it into my top 10 does not mean that I don't still love it or that I'm not happy to still have it in my collection. I feel like there's a lot of ways that you could rank your eyeshadow palettes, but this is kind of how I imagined doing this. This was kind of my criteria for making these selections today. I imagined if all of the eyeshadow palettes in my collection suddenly disappeared and somebody came to me and said, I will replace 10 of your eyeshadow palettes. Cost is not a factor. Which 10 would you need back in your life immediately? So these are basically the palettes that I couldn't live without. I mean, I could live without them. I would not die. But these are the palettes that I would first want to replace, the ones that I get the most enjoyment out of. So let's go ahead and jump right in. But before we do, any of you that are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that you'll stick around, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And let's start out with number 10. So we're going to start with number 10. Before we get into the list, I want to issue a challenge to any of you that have been around for a while. I want to see how many of you will guess at least 3 of the eyeshadow palettes that I will be mentioning today. Because my guess, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you'll probably be able to guess at least 3 of them. So pause right now, leave those guesses down below. So kicking things off with number 10, this is the one that just squeaked out a couple of others, and it's this one right here. This is the Milani Soft and Sultry palette. This is the only of these palettes that made it into this video, and that tells you I love all of those palettes so very much. But there are reasons that I chose other ones over those, which hopefully you'll kind of get a feel for at the end of this video. But I wanted to include this one, and the reason that I did is because this is the only true cool toned palette in my collection. And in my opinion, this is the most perfectly done cool tone palette. If you are someone that likes a true cool toned, almost a gray, but it's not quite gray. It's brown, but it's very cool. This is the perfect palette for that type of a look. You get such a great gradient in here to create that very smoky, perfectly blended look that I think can be somewhat difficult to create. When you're using these cooler tone, very pigmented, deep colors, it helps a lot to have variation and gradient to get that perfect seamless blend. And that I think is essential when you're doing a look that's very smoky, very dark. This palette is so perfect for that. I love the formula of the mattes. They're the perfect cool tone, but they definitely are still brown. They're not overly gray. These shimmers are stunning. You get a couple of varieties of different shimmers in here, and you also get quite a few transition shades. And you guys know I can't live without a good champagne or like a shimmery champagne or inner corner highlight. This palette is very different than anything else that I'm including in here today, but I don't typically reach for a cool tone look. That's not like my go-to type of a look. I usually like something that leans a little bit more warm. If I use anything too cool tone, then my eyes truly just look like plain Jane basic gray, which I don't love. But for those occasions where I do want just that very cool tone kind of smoky look, this is the palette that I would reach for to create that. Moving on to number 9, this is another smaller palette, and this is the Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions palette. These palettes in general, I truly love. I feel like for how tiny and compact they are, you get a lot of variety and versatility in these palettes. But of all of the palettes that I have from this line, I have 4 of them. I have the Warm Brown Obsessions, Smoky Obsessions, Coral Obsessions, and this Mauve Obsessions. This one is the one that I would pick, partly because of the other ones that I selected. This one's a little bit different, but this palette is the most perfectly done palette of all of those palettes that I have tried. You have a matte ivory in here. You have these beautiful deep shades that are super unique. If you can see this grayish purple right here, I love this color for smoking out the outer corner, or if you want something a little bit more berry toned, this kind of burgundy red is so stunning. These are so easy to work with, and I love the tone of these colors. If you like that soft kind of feminine rosy type of eye look that gives you a little bit of pink but a little bit more richness than just like a standard soft pink, this gives you that look so perfectly. I think it's such a beautiful look on any eye color, on any skin tone. This is just such a beautiful palette. You have everything in here that you would need to create something really soft and kind of barely there, or something very rich and kind of almost smoky but still very soft and feminine. So that is why this one is coming in at number 9. Coming in at number 8 is this palette right here. This is such a fun palette. It is the Magic Mini palette by Juvia's Place. This is a very versatile palette. You have so much variety. There are so many different looks that you could create with this palette, especially if you combined it with something else, like a neutral palette. I love the variety you get in here. I love the Juvia's Place formula. I have done a full review on this specific palette where I think I did 3 or 4 looks with this. I will link that right here for those of you that have not seen it. This is just such a great palette. There are so many fun colors in here to play with, but none of these colors, in my opinion, are overly intense or overly vivid to the point that they wouldn't really suit my personality. I don't play with a variety of colors very often, which is why this palette is ranked at number 8. But the formula of this, the versatility of this, if you are someone that does not have a lot of color in your collection, you want to add something that will give you some versatility, highly recommend this palette. This is probably the first colorful eye palette I would recommend for someone that's sort of afraid of color, if that makes any sense. But a great palette, highly recommend this one. One of my favorites when I'm wanting something a little bit different. So the next few palettes are almost all interchangeable. These were very difficult for me to rank one above the other because I feel like these all kind of sit perfectly in the middle of my lineup. These are palettes that I absolutely love, but there's usually 1 or 2 things about each palette that I wish was a little bit different. But I ended up going with this one at number 7. Originally it was at number 6, but I moved it down for a couple of reasons, and it is the Persona Identity palette. Love this palette. One of the best formulas that I have in my collection. If you are someone that does not like warm tones, if you like neutral tones, this is a great palette. I think the shimmers in here are stunning, especially. The mattes are really easy to work with and very beautiful. If you are someone that is sensitive to shimmer, emphasizing texture on your eyelids, so you like a very specific type of shimmer formula, I feel like this is the type of shimmer that would work for someone with slightly more mature eyelids, someone that has texture on their eyelids, because it's not chunky, it's very refined, it's very, very soft and kind of barely there. It's just a really beautiful texture, and the colors in here are perfect. The only strike, I guess, I have against this palette is if you look at these, other than these shades right here, if you look at these shades right here, these are all pretty deep, and I think that it's very easy to get a more dramatic look than you intended with this palette sometimes. Don't get me wrong, there are times that I want a dramatic look, and this is definitely a good palette to reach for when I want a little bit more depth and a little bit more drama. But if I want more of an everyday soft kind of look, I feel like we're missing a tone. We're missing something a little bit lighter than this shade right here. You could definitely mix these 2 shades together to lighten it up a little bit. You just have to be a little bit careful with some of these shades because they can get pretty intense pretty quickly. But other than that, this is a fantastic palette. Love the color selection, love the formula. Cannot wait for her second palette to come out. That is definitely one that I have my eye on that I very likely might buy in the near future. Number 7 right here, one of the best eyeshadow formulas in my collection, and beautiful color story if you like neutrals. Coming in at number 6, I really want to give this one a tie because I cannot decide between these 2 palettes. They're different from each other, but I feel like I don't need them both, but I can't quite decide. I keep changing my mind one over the other. So the one that I ended up going with, oh, did I make the right choice? Was the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. This is such a beautiful palette. I did a 7 looks video with this palette. I know a lot of you guys have probably seen or tried out this palette. You probably know I love Anastasia's formula. It's one of my favorite formulas to work with. The color story in here is stunning. It's very neutral tone, so there's nothing overly cool or overly warm in here. You get a couple pops of cool and you get a couple pops of warm. If you like a good neutral brown in the crease and a good shimmer on your lid, this is like the perfect palette for you. There are so many beautiful lid shimmers in here. I love the gold. I love this rose gold. This silvery shade is so unique to my collection. You also get the perfect gradient of browns in here. You get a black, and you also get this perfect lid shade. I almost selected the Soft Glam palette. This was such a hard choice. I also love this palette. I've been loving this so much recently. I have plans to do a 7 looks video with this coming up very, very soon. The only reason I decided to go with the Sultry over this one for now is mainly because these kind of rosy shades right here, I feel like are kind of repeated mainly in the Mob Obsessions palette that I picked, but also in a couple other palettes that I have coming up. But I've got to say, I would have a really hard time living without these 2 shades. These are some of my very favorite transition shades in my entire makeup collection, which is one of the reasons why I'm feeling like maybe I made the wrong decision. Is it legal for me to give these 2 a tie? Let's go with Sultry, but honestly, I could put either of those palettes in that spot and be perfectly happy and equally sad that the other one's not also in that spot, if that makes any sense at all. Moving on to number 5. Now we're getting into the really good stuff. This is the stuff that like I am truly attached to. These are the type of palettes that when I use them, I'm having so much fun doing my makeup with these type of palettes. These are the ones that have a piece of my heart, if you know what I mean. And the one at number 5 is relatively new to my collection. It is the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. This palette is very expensive. I do think if you are someone on a budget, I don't think this is necessarily worth the $65 price point, and it's very likely that you could probably replicate a lot of these shades in other palettes from, say, ColourPop, but I love having this palette in my collection. This is one of the palettes that when I use this thing, I have so much fun with my makeup. I love playing with these orangey yellows. I love these berry tones. This purple is so fun. There's a perfect bronze in here. This is just such a fun palette to play with. I know that it's expensive. I don't love recommending super expensive eyeshadows, but I've got to say, if someone was like, let me replace 10 of your eyeshadow palettes, I don't care what they cost, I would definitely want to replace this one. I have similar shades to a lot of these in my collection, but the overall feel of this palette is just a little bit different. These yellows are definitely a lot more intense, a lot more vivid and bold on my eyes. I've got some yellows in an e.l.f. palette, I've got some in a ColourPop palette, and I love those. But these ones are a lot more vibrant and intense. They do have a little bit more like pop to them, if that makes any sense. I just really enjoyed this palette. A day when I get to use my Sunrise palette is a day that I'm very excited to do my makeup. Overpriced, yes, but would I want it back if I lost it? Absolutely. Moving on to number 4. For number 4, I've got to go with this right here. This is the Dream Street palette by Kathleen Lights and ColourPop. You guys probably know that I love this palette. I feel like I talk about it a lot, and I'm not the only one that talks about it a lot. This is a beloved palette by many for very good reason. If you're one of those people that likes your neutrals that are kind of warm, but you occasionally like to dip into color a little bit, this is the perfect palette for you. It has every neutral that you would ever want. 2 different transition shades, both a warmer one and more of a neutral one. A beautiful rose gold, a copper. You have this beautiful kind of golden lid topper shade. You also get some really pretty blues in here. This red is so fun to pop a little bit of this into your crease just to warm up your look. You guys know I love my matte browns. They are essentials for me. This is one of my favorites. This is the type of matte brown that has just the right amount of warmth to it, but it's also very intense and rich, but easy to blend. I know there are similar colors to this found in a lot of other eyeshadow palettes, but if you like these type of colors, if you haven't tried this thing out, if you don't have a lot of these in your collection, or maybe you're someone that's just starting out in makeup, this is one I would definitely recommend picking up. It's affordable, it's easy to work with. I feel like it gives you everything that you would need to create a variety of different looks that aren't too crazy or over the top, but are still very fun. Coming in at number 3 is this one right here. This one surprised me so much that I ended up putting this at number 3, but I just truly love this palette, and it surprised me how much I loved it. It's the Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe palette. This palette came in BoxyCharm last year, and I think a lot of people were surprised at how incredible the formula of these are, the color story, but considering that you only get 8 shadows in here, I feel like there's so much versatility inside this palette. I feel like the selection of colors in here is perfect for someone that loves anywhere from a neutral to possibly a slightly more bold look. You can get some seriously intense bold looks out of this thing, some colorful looks, but you can also get some really beautiful everyday wearable looks out of this as well. The formula of all of these are fantastic. The mattes are so pigmented, so easy to blend. These shimmers, there's just something special about them. This kind of green shade is so unique to my collection, and it's one of those shades that anytime I wear this, my eye makeup looks amazing. In fact, I've worn this in a video before, and I had like 3 comments in that video saying, what is on your eyes? And it was this color right here. This truly is a special palette. If you have not tried out these eyeshadows, I highly recommend them. She now has 2 palettes. I'm very curious to try the second one, but this original color story is just so fun. It's just such a well done palette. Again, this is one of those palettes that when I use this thing, I have so much fun creating eye looks using this palette. Last 2, guys, this was very difficult to do. These were another 2 that I kind of went back and forth between which one do I put at number 1, which one do I put at number 2. I love them both. They're somewhat similar to each other, but they also each have their own unique strengths. But ultimately, at number 2, I decided to go with the Juvia's Place Nubian 2 palette. You guys probably know that this is one of my all-time favorite palettes, which is why it's coming in at number 2. I have praised this thing to the skies many, many times. This is such a beautiful palette. You get so much variety of color and depth. You get some great transition shades in here, a variety of like beautiful lid shades in here. This is one of the best. I know it's just a champagne color, But this is one of the best champagnes I have in my entire collection. I know that that seems very basic, but truly it's extra special. There's just something about this palette that is so special. The formula is so easy to work with. The pan sizes in here are, some might say, obnoxiously ginormous, but I don't mind that too much. I know I'll never run out of these eyeshadows. Love the formula of these. Again, you get those 2 little pops of color if you want to be experimental, but everything else in here is pretty neutral. You can create a variety of like everyday kind of looks to very deep kind of smoky looks if you want to deepen things up a bit. Of all the palettes of hers, I always put this one first. It's just such a well done palette. I think every color in here is special, is unique, has its own purpose, can be used for a different type of a look. It's lovely. I love this palette. So we are down to my number 1 ranked eyeshadow palette. This is the one that if someone said, okay, let's start with your first palette, what palette would you want to replace very first? Oh, this was so close. It was so close between the Nubian 2 and this one, but I ended up going with this. There's a good chance some of you might guess this one right. It is the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. I used this palette to create my first ever 7 looks video, and I've got to say, I think you could create way more than 7 looks with this palette. There are endless possibilities inside this palette, not just because you get a variety of colors, you get a variety of tones, you get a variety of finishes, you get everything that you would need to create so many different types of looks in here. You can do monochromatic, you can do contrasting colors. There's so many options in here. It's such a fun palette to play with, but also as someone that loves neutral eyeshadows, these are not the types of colors that intimidate me. I feel like these are colors that someone that is afraid of color could still work with. These purples look stunning on the eye. This is the color that I'm wearing today. I did do a Get Ready With Me featuring this palette, which will be coming up shortly. I feel like every time I reach for this palette, I can create something different, but it always looks amazing. It always looks wearable, but it has just the right amount of color to it, if you know what I mean. They just did such a good job. I love the packaging. It's so adorable, but just the colors, and I mean, the formula is great, but the color selection inside is what just sends this one over the top. I just don't know how you could create a more perfectly everyday colorful type of eyeshadow palette. This palette satisfies the neutral lover in me. It also satisfies those times when I want to experiment a little bit and play with color. Basically any mood I could ever be in, this palette would suit that mood. Alright you guys, so that is it for my top 10 eyeshadows ranked. Truly, these are the palettes that I think have my heart the very most. These are the ones I most recommend and would have a hard time living without. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have any eyeshadow palettes that would make it into your top 10 that I didn't mention today. There is a very good chance I haven't tried them yet, so please let me know in the comments below if you have those recommendations. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today, for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, hope that you will subscribe, hit the notification bell before you leave. And that is it. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye. Some arrangements on my desk, or this is going to end very badly. Do not want these falling off my desk. I have a cement floor underneath me. I'm sure you all can guess what happens when an eyeshadow palette falls on a cement floor. This satisfies the neutral lover. Oh my gosh, why is this sentence so hard to say? Satisfies the neutral lover. This palette satisfies the neutral lover. I cannot. Neutral lover. Why is that so hard to say?
She's so sad. She really wants to see you.
Okay, bring her down. Oh my goodness, you're crying. Look at Charlie crying. Oh, look how sad she is. Is that a fake cry? Oh, I should wear my glasses today. That would be fun. Look at my eyes. They're ring lights. Yeah.